I am Vinny Todderton, folks. Here we are again on the Friday show. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent when we start this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean. That's a guarantee, or your money back. Although this is a free podcast, I'll give you your money back. What the hell? Folks, people have been asking me on Twitter to have this person on. I looked around. I didn't look around. I got Megan to look around, check her out. Megan goes, yeah. And I think my friend Ben, Dr. Ben Bacacchio said, oh, yeah. And when Ben says, yeah, this person's someone you should talk to, then I go, okay. Yeah, I will look into this woman. Michelle Hurn, how you doing, Pumpkin?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm a big fan of Dr. Ben too.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's been on the show. That's the
Oh,
kind
very
of
cool.
company. We've been doing this show for 10 years and we've done well over 2,000 shows now. And we used to put experts on all the time, but we saved the Friday show. The show that you're on here, is the one for experts. We do 5 shows a week. And we've had everyone from William Davis to Pearl Mutter. Nina's a perennial all-star, and Gary Taubes. When I say Nina, I mean Nina Teicholz.
Of course,
One
yeah.
one of the I think one of the early shows, first 40 shows, one of my heroes, Dr. Tim Noakes came on, and then during his trial, I took over his show for a while and did a few episodes for him. If people knew what we've been through in the past 10 years, we're all just a bit battle worn. We've all been here doing this, pushing this, and I love seeing new faces like you coming around and your book, Dietitian's Dilemma. Folks, she also has a website, dietitiansdilemma.net. Go check it all out. Welcome, Michelle. Let me start with
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Your story reminds me of something that happened maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I've told the story before. And you tell me if this doesn't sound familiar to you. And then I think by me telling you the story, it's gonna be like a kicker setting up a ball and a tee, and then you're just gonna tee off, or maybe
Got it. I'm ready.
maybe a golf tee. Um, just like you, I go around and talk, a lot. Whenever someone wants me to do a talk, I go. And I found myself in Princeton, New Jersey, at a small university called Princeton. And they had me talking on, two things. They had me on a dais that morning with other experts. And then I was going to give a whole talk the next day, like, my whole dog and pony the next day. So what you don't know about me, Michelle, is I don't do research on who I'm going to be talking with or about. I don't care if it's a dais full of vegans or whatever. The truth is the truth. I'm not going to change who I am based on who's up there, right?
Good.
My opinions and what I have to say, I'm not going to play to the audience. So I purposely, whenever they say, oh, you're going to be on a dais with this guy, that I'll just say, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I will be on your dais. Thank you very much. And that was very much the case at Princeton that morning. They told me to be outside at a time, 9 o'clock. I'm old school. You won't know who this guy is, but there was a great coach, Vince Lombardi.
Oh, of course I know Vince. I'm a big football fan.
Okay, so you know who Lombardi is. He used to say, no one can be perfect, but if you strive for perfection, you can land on excellence. And I've lived by that. I've also lived by Lombardi time. If someone says 9 o'clock, at 8:45, I'm outside ready to rock and roll. So I'm outside in front of a hotel at 8:45. No one shows up. 8:50, 9 o'clock, 9:05, 9:15. I called and said, hey guys, apparently I got the wrong time. Was it 9 o'clock or 8 or 10 o'clock? And they said, no, the guy is coming. He's running late. Guy gets there. It's a student from the university and a clunker. And I'm not even sure this car is going to make it from the hotel back to Princeton. But we get there and they tell me the moderator is already up there. They've already started. They mentioned that you were going to be late. Makes me look bad, by the way. It makes me look like I'm the guy who's late. But okay. While someone is talking, they bring me up and seat me on the dais. And as soon as I sat down and got my equilibrium, I heard someone, a female voice, maybe 3 mics down from me, and she said, fat burns in the flame of carbohydrates. And without skipping a beat, I said, Robert Haas, 1984, maybe 1983, in the book, Eat to Win. And that's not true. And the room got silent. And she said, well, what of it? I said, that's something that was written in a book. I can't remember the exact year, but I could tell you it was Robert Haas and the book was Eat to Win. It was either 83 or 84. And that's when we got on this athletes should have nothing but carbs around the clock train. And the woman didn't get upset with me, although I can be somewhat brash. Instead, when we were done talking at the end of this whole dais, she came up to me and she said, what do you know of this? And I said, I'm Vinny. Here's who I am. This is what I do. Who are you? What do you do? She was the head dietitian, and I won't mention the hospital, even though I remember it. And I said, you're the head dietitian in a hospital, a major hospital in New York. And you really believe this? She goes, it's what we were taught, and it's what I believe. And I said, really? And she hung around for the next 2 days. I got to know her husband, great people. Went to cocktail parties with them. She kept coming up to me, asking me, this was at the early part of, we weren't even using the term keto yet. That's how long ago this was. My book was a major deal, a big bestseller, blah, 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 blah. And she wanted to know more about me. She went home and Googled, and she wanted to know more, and she wanted to know more. I sent her down some roads. I gave her my phone number. I heard from her about 2 weeks later, and she said, I've gone down rabbit holes. I've read Grain Brain. I've read William Davis. I've read everything Dr. Noakes has written. She had found, what's his name? The pediatric specialist, Sugar the Bitter Truth, Lustig.
Lustig, yeah.
She had, why is that? She had read some of the stuff Nina was coming up with and so on and so forth. And I said, well, why are you calling me? And she says, I have a dilemma. That's why I realized you're a dietitian, you wrote a book called Dilemma. She goes, I cannot unknow the truth now, but I have to walk into a hospital and lie to people every day. What say you?
Yes, I mean, thank you again for having me. That's the title of my book, The Dietitian's Dilemma. What do you do when you find out, you get your health back and you find out everything you were taught is untrue and is a lie, and like you said, unfortunately, ideally, when you heal and when you find out these certain principles work, you would be able to go into your hospital and teach it. We have so many good clinical trials on a low carbohydrate diet, but I don't know. Do you want me to back up and tell a little bit about my story, like how I got there?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. So my story actually starts when I was 12. When I was 12, I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. I was a little over 5 feet tall and 57.5 pounds. So I went to inpatient treatment for 2 months. At that point, my heart was failing, my kidneys were failing. The doctor told my parents I had about a 10% chance to live. And that was my first interaction with a dietitian. And at that time, I was put on.
Back up even more.
Sure.
how did you get there at 12? What
How
was
did I get
going
there at
on?
12?
Yeah. Or do you
Yeah.
want to tell that story?
No, that's a great question. And it's the first chapter of my book, little promo there. So I'm the youngest of four. I have three older sisters, and my mom is actually bipolar. So growing up, it was very challenging in our household. My mom also struggled with eating disorder tendencies and behaviors, kind of oscillated between, extreme depression and mania, restricting food. And my father was working a lot, trying to support, four kids. And I ended up just struggling. I was actually being physically abused at school. I had, there were bullies, there were people that were picking on me. And, back then we didn't have cameras and social media. So nobody really knew, our family didn't sit together for meals. And so it was very easy to not eat. And that gave me this feeling, I describe in the book as just kind of feeling high, like this feeling things were going to be okay, when I didn't eat. And unfortunately, over time, the malnourished brain, it doesn't function well. So, most people with anorexia fail to see how serious this disease was. I mean, like I said, I was literally 57 pounds and I didn't think I had a problem. It wasn't until in seventh grade, I was walking to class and I remember feeling like, ooh, my stomach hurts. And then I woke up in a hospital. And at that time, my blood glucose was 24. I didn't know what that meant at the time. Now, obviously, as I'm a health professional, I know that means you could have gone into a coma. And when I was in the hospital, I have to let my puppy out here. There was actually a police officer there that talked to me by myself. And he wanted to know if my parents were abusing me. And I remember being shocked at that question because I was not being abused by my parents. And he said, well, there's bruises all up and down my spine and on my arms just because I was so thin, just sitting hurt. So, that incident was my ticket to an inpatient treatment center for 2 months, and of course, back then, I'm 12, I get dropped off in Arizona. I don't see my parents for 2 months. There's no cell phones, no internet. So minimal calls. I'm immediately put on a 24-hour tube feeding system. And what's crazy, and you probably know this, is that over 25 years later, I'm 38 now, tube feeding ingredients are the same that they were when I was 12. And the number one ingredients of tube feeding formulas: corn syrup, maltodextrin, canola oil, soy protein, and, just some vitamins and minerals.
Ugh.
So we're feeding these, I was fed, I was immediately put on 7 different medications for anxiety, for constipation, for diarrhea, for depression. And I was immediately forced to eat the standard American diet. And I did become weight restored. I did gain weight, but I was told you are always going to have anxiety. You are going to think about food for the rest of your life. You're going to have racing thoughts around food. You're going to constantly be thinking about calories. You're just going to have to become...
Hang on. They're telling this to a 12-year-old in a hospital?
Yeah. Because I said, I struggled. I said, I'm going to think about this forever. This is how it is. I was told you don't really recover. Recovery means that you're able to eat all foods. You're able to stay weight restored. But this anxiety is just, it's your lot in life. This is what you're going to have. And yeah, it's funny you say that. When I got older, now when I see my nieces and nephews that were 12, they're playing with fairies and Barbies. I'm like, oh my God, I had to grow up quickly as a 12-year-old, right? But yeah, I just thought like that's how I'm going to have to be. I'm going to have to be a high functioning person with an eating disorder, or just eating disorder.
Are you familiar with Dr. Georgia Eads?
Yeah, I cite her research all the time. She actually just wrote an incredible article of revolutionizing anorexia care. And I love what she said, about that.
Oh my God. I love Georgia, and Georgia's been on the show. Georgia's in my first movie, Fat, a documentary. Have you seen any of my movies?
I've seen the first movie, yes.
Yeah, Georgia's in that movie. We fell in love with her and her wife, Serena and I, just an incredible human being. But she's done more research into this than anyone else. So folks, if you're listening to this and you have a problem right now, besides Michelle's book, Georgia Eads is another great book. This drives me nuts that a 12-year-old this is the information you're getting in a lockdown facility where your parents aren't even around.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy.
And this still happens today. I've actually worked in 2 different psychiatric units, and as in the last 5 years, and we're still, adolescents with eating disorders are just told like, you're just going to have to deal with it. This is how you're going to be. You're always going to think about food. And I have an entire chapter in my book on eating disorders and mental illness. And I cite the work of Georgie. She's done incredible work on neurotransmitters in the brain.
Yeah.
And so, as I went through, high school, I ended up becoming an athlete. I fell in love with running, with distance running. And it was kind of this first opportunity that actually really felt like I had to fuel myself. Like, oh, this feels good. If I eat, I get to run. But unfortunately, I had low bone density. I ended up having a stress fracture my senior year. And, I went and ran in college for 2 years, but I had a second stress fracture. And once again, it was always like, well, this is your fault. You had this anorexia. But I was sure that food was powerful. I followed the standard American diet. And like I said, I had severe anxiety. I ended up having two stress fractures, but I wanted to learn more about nutrition. I just had this intuition that it could help people.
Yeah.
So I decided to pursue becoming a dietitian. And once I became, once you have to be a dietitian, you have to go through your 4-year degree, then you have to get into an internship.
Right.
And when I went to my internship, things just didn't make sense. We would go into a room with someone who's severely diabetic, and the dietitian would tell me, okay, their blood sugar is too high. So we're going to put them on a 75-gram carb diet, meaning they get 75 grams of carbs every meal. And I said, well, wait, if their blood sugar is too high, maybe they shouldn't have so many carbs. And then oh no, you have to have carbs. Like you said, that dogma that carbs burn in the flame of fat, or fat burns in the flame of carbs, that's been around forever. And I said, well, I don't think, maybe we can give them less carbs at this time. I was kind of pegged as this like difficult dietetic student. And I remember we went to the ICU and I flipped over that tube feeding and I was like, oh my God, look at these ingredients. This is the same shit I got fed at the eating disorder facility when I was 12. At that time I was 25. But you're new, you're a student, you're trying to learn, and you're just told that you must have carbohydrates, the base of the food pyramid. And it wasn't until, that next year, at that time it was called the American Dietetics Association. Now it's called the Academy of Nutrition. It's a governing board of all dietitians. So it is responsible for education. In 2009, when I became a dietitian, the #1 sponsors were Kellogg's, General Mills, Sara Lee, Hershey's, PepsiCo. A few years later, they added Unilever, Conagra. And as of 2021, you can't make this up. We are sponsored by the National Confectioners Association. We are literally sponsored by candy.
Oh, yeah, look, I don't know if you know this, but you mentioned Unilever. They basically fund, whenever someone goes, this study just came out of Harvard. It's like, if it came out of Harvard, I don't have to read it. It's like, what do you mean you don't have to read it? It's like, Unilever pays Walter Willett. End of story. Done. I don't want to hear it. If it came out of Harvard School, DIETITIAN'S school, or whatever in the hell they're calling it nowadays, don't want to hear it, not interested, because they're squinting and making the research look the way they want it to look. Mm-hmm. It's not correct. And I'm sure you already know this, but the whole Dietitians Association was started by Kellogg's through the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You're aware of that, right?
That's also my book. It's in I have a chapter on where the nutrition guidelines came from. And that chapter, it's bizarre. I mean, it basically started with Ellen White and the Seventh-day Adventist Church and Kellogg's. Their goal was to make an anti-aphrodisiac because, we wouldn't want meat. Apparently gave you this like lustful sinning of masturbation, like perish the thought, right? So they wanted to feed people, these meat analogs, nuttos, made of beans, and they actually had that corn cereal. They're like, oh, we'll give this to people, and it was Kellogg's that made that. He was actually not a very nice human if you look into it.
Oh, no, Kellogg was horrible. CW Post was just as bad. This is back when these guys that had a lot of money, because we didn't have an internet back then, obviously, and they would go to their friends who owned newspapers and go, hey, we need to run a smear campaign. So at one point, CW Post came up with a product called Postum. Are you familiar with Postum?
Yep.
Yeah, it was they basically took grains and burnt them and made it kind of taste like coffee. But now you have a problem. How do you get people to drink the sludge called Postum? Well, first you got to tell everyone that coffee will stunt your growth, cause you to be dumb and stupid. These are actually terms that they used in their campaigns in the biggest newspapers in this country. There was a time when people would give their kids coffee as young as 4 and 5 years old. I started drinking coffee at 4. And that sounds crazy. And you sit there and you think, and by the way, they're still doing it. They'll go, oh, there's acrylamide in coffee, and they'll go on and on and on and just make up stuff. Meanwhile, coffee is probably the healthiest thing you can drink, not according to the Seventh-day Adventists, not according to Pope.
Well, according to the Seventh-day Adventists, they actually, when they were, because the Academy of Nutrition, they were actually, the American Dietetic Association back then, in the early on, was very hesitant to embrace vegetarian diets because they were really concerned about B12. And actually research, and if you guys aren't, if you're just listening, I'm doing air quotes from this Ellen White and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They said, well, we have B12 in these vegetarian foods. And so they tested all of these, vegetarian foods, and they found no B12. They're like, oh no, what do we do? And so they just came out with a statement that said, you know what, as long as you eat grains and nuts and beans, B12 is not a problem. Like, it's fine. And that's not true at all. But they put that out there. And like you said, we didn't have internet and we didn't have access to scholarly articles. So when you put this out into a large community that believed you, that just kind of became how it was, So I just find it amazing that under their own roof, they were quote unquote publishing research. Like that they basically were just saying whatever they want and calling it fact. Oh, and that had a huge influence on the beginning of the nutrition guidelines towards leaning highly towards vegetarianism.
My favorite thing, and I've always said this, I said, in the 1860s, Ellen G. White, I actually put this little thing in my first movie. I said, Ellen G. White woke up one morning and said, God came to me in my sleep last night. And instead of them saying, hey, we need to get some men in white coats to come here and get this woman off to a rubber room, they went, really? What did God have to say? If your wife woke up tomorrow morning, Michelle, and said, last night, God came to me in my sleep, and she was adamant about it, wouldn't you seek help?
I would say, you need to go get a cup of coffee, and you're tripping.
We need to talk.
Yes, I wouldn't, if she spouted out some random fact that said, yeah, we need to go pack our stuff and move to Egypt, I'd be like, no, that's not happening. That sounds like a strange dream, Well, but yeah, that's literally what it was. She literally believed she had visions from God. And they wrote a whole book about it, her and her husband. And some of the stuff in there is nuts, just like, these flesh foods will, make your blood bad and tear up your stomach. And it's total nonsense. It has nothing to do with fact, but you make a great point that it really started the course of how this country ate. Like, it kind of laid some of the foundation of a lot of that, where that nutrition dogma came from.
I don't know if you know this, but I just put out my third documentary, Beyond Impossible, where I go after the impossible meat, impossible burgers and all this stuff. And I invited tons of vegan doctors, the heads of the vegan communities, Dean Ornish, Walter Willett, Greger, even though he's not really a doctor. I don't know if do you know that about Michael Greger?
I didn't know he wasn't a doctor. I feel like he advertises he's a doctor.
Well, he wears a white coat and he has a stethoscope around his neck. And he is a PhD. But you see and he says it in my movie. I actually have him saying it on camera. McDougall, another vegan who I also invited to my movie, I put that uneasy video because Michael Greger claims, you're going to love this.
Oh, God.
That when he left medical school, in order, then you have to go into a hospital and do your residency and do all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. He decided that working with one patient at a time was not going to be the best way to heal the world. So he decided to never go into residency, but to go train other doctors. That's what he claims. So he never did his residency. So he never got his DR. He cannot call himself a medical doctor, an MD. He can never say I'm an MD.
Yeah.
Or a DO or anything. He's nothing. He's basically a PhD because he never, ever worked with a patient ever, not for one day. But anyone can go out and buy a white coat and anyone can put a stethoscope around their neck because the connotation is once you do that, you're a doctor, right?
Good marketing, good propaganda on his part.
And he puts out books called How Not to Die. Now,
I've read it.
I've invited all of these people. I want to get your opinion on that book since you've read it. I've invited all these people in my movie, and instead of just saying, hey, because I was trying to get both sides of the story, whenever you watch What the Health or, any of these vegan propaganda, Forks Over Knives or, any of these vegan propaganda movies, Game Changers or any of them, they all say the same thing, right? They give you one side of a story. I wanted to bring both sides to Beyond Impossible. I just couldn't get one vegan doctor to show up for an interview. And instead of just saying that on camera, I showed their rejection letters back to them. I couldn't do all, we did like 20 or 25. I couldn't do them all, but I did all the main ones, like
Sure.
Willett, Greger, McDougall, Ornish.
And I'm really glad you did that, because you know what? I feel like anybody who's being challenged, if you are confident in your stance, you are not afraid to be challenged, or you're
Right.
not afraid. I'm not afraid for anybody to ask me anything. And I'm also not afraid to grow, evolve, learn,
Yeah, same here.
Unfortunately, the book, when I was writing my book, I felt like the same way. I was like, well, I need to see the other side. I want to read this vegan book, How Not to Die. And I feel like anytime every vegan book, every vegan paper I've ever written, they seem to they say the same things that have already been disproven. These were articles that came out in the early 60s and 70s. They say saturated fat is bad. They say fruits and vegetables are full of fiber and antioxidants and all these things. They tell this one part of the story, which really doesn't apply very well to humans. Humans, every species has a species specific diet. Humans do not digest and utilize plant nutrition very well. We evolved to eat meat and fat. Meat and fat is highly bioavailable. What does that mean? That means that, I love the example of spinach and steak for iron. If spinach has 1.5 grams of iron and steak has, 1.5 grams, steak has more, but you can only absorb 1.7% of the amount in spinach, where you can absorb 20 to 30% in steak. That would be like, Vinny, if I wrote you a check for $1,000 and you're like, sweet, I'm going to go cash this $1,000 check. And you get to the bank and they're like, she's got $17 in her bank account.
Right.
You're like, well, that's garbage. It doesn't matter how much it is if you can't actually use it. Just like if you write a check and you can't access the funds. We cannot access the funds for vegetables very well. And they also, we now know too that LDL is good. We can get into that, but every freaking vegan is terrified of LDL.
We do LDL every week on this show. That's why,
okay, then we don't
that's why I have you on. I want to talk about other stuff,
Yes.
because you've been there.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know if you know this, but you know how we came about spinach being great for iron? Do you know the story behind that?
No, did Popeye?
It was a cartoon.
Yeah.
The cartoon gave us, they're using information from a fucking cartoon.
Yeah, well, and it's so funny. Isn't that funny? It's one of those things that gets repeated over and over again. Nobody really questions it. People just think I'm supposed to eat and I'm just supposed to be fat, or I'm supposed to eat and have poor energy. I can't tell you how many people I talked to in the hospital that had diabetes that just thought well, my dad had diabetes, so I'm always going to have diabetes.
Oh, and doctors tell them that. Oh, it's in your, and by the way, as I tell everyone or try to educate everyone, look, if you have type 1 diabetes, luck of the draw, you got a bad deal. As a matter of fact, it's not even that hereditary. People that have no diabetes in their family on either side, someone can have type 1 diabetes or juvenile diabetes or whatever you want to call it, right? Type 2 diabetes, you give to yourself. Some people are more susceptible than others, but that's a you thing.
And that is in most cases reversible. You can fix it.
Almost in every case is reversible. If you don't fix it all the way, you can at least get it to a manageable level. If you're that metabolically broken, you can get it to a manageable level. What say you?
Yes, I've never seen anybody in the hospital that could not get it to a manageable level. And most people completely reverse it with the low carb diet, low carb, high fat, animal-based diet. I saw people reverse it. Vinny, I had patients that had diabetes for 20 years. I saw people reverse it in weeks on a low carb diet. I had a guy that came to the hospital. He was completely septic, meaning he had an infection in his blood because he stepped on a piece of glass, but he didn't feel it because he had no feeling in his feet from diabetes. I witnessed several people with amputations, blindness, people die. Wounds don't heal when you're diabetic. And, as dietitians, we're told like, oh, the patients are just they're not following the guidelines. They're overeating. It's not, for the most part. And of course there are exceptions. A lot of people are trying, but these high carb, high sugar guidelines just set us up to be hungry. They set you up to be fat, and they set you up to be diabetic, and it's like you said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once I saw the power of high fat, high protein, and low carb, I couldn't unsee it. I said, you have to let me teach patients. And I was told in the hospital, you talk about this, you're gone. And I said,
what
okay.
happened? So how do you deal with that? It is your dilemma. Are you still in the hospital?
No, well, first of all, I thought naively, I thought that like, well, I'll just bring research, because people say, is keto safe? Is low carb safe? Dr. Eric Westman was the first person that told me, Michelle, there is more research on a low carb diet saying it is safe, sustainable, and effective than any other diet out there, than veganism, vegetarian, Mediterranean, whatever.
Not according to U.S. News and World Report for like 6 years in a row now. They still call it the worst diet on the planet.
Oh God, I know. I took it. I took 20 articles to my clinical director and said, look at this.
They're not interested in the truth.
No, she said that's nice. That's interesting. But our hospital, we have to do this.
Yeah.
And so I will neither confirm nor deny that I decided that I would tell patients, well, here's what I have to chart, but I'm going to actually tell you what works.
Right.
And
how long did that go on for?
A couple weeks, because one patient got really excited and told their nurse, and their nurse told my boss, and I got suspended.
Wow.
And so then, and around this time, this was in early 2000. And I mean, just to back up a little bit, like how I became low carb, I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon, and I got really sick. I couldn't run. My body hurt. I was super anxious. And I talked to a few dietitians. They said, you need more carbohydrates. So I tried that, and I got worse. Yeah. And, I've told the story before that I just came home from work one day. I had a really shitty day. I fell asleep at like 5 o'clock, and I woke up at 2 a.m, and my body was on fire. Just felt like everything hurt. So I drove to 7-Eleven, got, 30 pounds of ice and put it in the bathtub. So it's 3 a.m, and I was sitting in ice bath, and I'm crying. Yeah. And my wife was like, she came in and she's like, well, maybe we should do something different. I'm done running. I mean, I'll fast forward. So I just ended up adopting a carnivore diet. I went totally carnivore for 30 days. Wow. And 3 weeks after going totally carnivore, my wife sat me down and said, this is the best your anxiety has been in the 11 years that I've known you.
Wow.
And so fast forward even further, now I'm in the hospital, trying to advocate this. I get suspended, and I just got angry, and I said, I'm going to write a book. And because I knew it was I knew it was amazing for diabetes. And I was just learning about sarcopenia, because we see sarcopenia, just muscle wasting in the hospital all the time. And I was so fortunate to get to interview Chris Palmer. And I was just diving into the work of Georgia E. And I was like, since my anxiety had been so much better, I was like, could this help other people's anxiety? And so, yeah. And so I just, every free moment I had, I wrote. And then I lost most of my clinical hours because of COVID. It was kind of a blessing. And then I just got to the point where I was like, I can't do this. And so, putting my ego in the bag, I ended up taking a minimum wage job working with making sausage in Portland, Oregon, in a local family place.
A lesbian making sausage. Yeah.
Trust me, there's a lot of lesbian jokes, or lesbians making sausage. I get and so, but I did that. And so every day I ran, I made sausage, and I wrote, and I talked with anyone who would listen to me. I said, this is my story. I couldn't run it at all, and now I'm running. And I got with Zach Bitter, who's an ultra marathoner.
Zach has been on this show a gazillion times.
He was coaching me. He said, let's do this. I said, I couldn't run at all. I thought I was done. And a low carb diet let me dream again.
Well, let me stop you right there, because, I don't know. Do you know who Mike McKnight is?
Yeah, I'm going on his podcast tomorrow. We're good friends. He did an entire, he ran 128 miles with no calories at all.
Yeah.
128 miles.
Yeah. He, as a matter of fact, we sponsor him now.
Oh, good.
I was the first one to bring him on a couple of years ago when he ran 100 miles and water and now he's doing a whole different thing. And the only electrolyte he's using is ultra salt. As a matter of fact, he's taking it out of the capsule, because the capsule is considered caloric, because,
oh man, jeez. Good for him.
Yeah. Michael, have you seen this movie From Broken to Breaking?
I haven't watched that. No.
I've been trying to get the people who put my films out to take that film on. Problem is that he put it on YouTube, and then, you know, other distributors go, well, it's been on YouTube, we don't want to take it. It's an incredible film. Go tonight if you can and watch From Broken to
I will.
Breaking. It's an amazing story that Mike put out there, and it's a really great documentary. But Mike McKnight is doing it. Zach Bitters, hell, we had him on 10 years ago. We would bring him on. And here's the crazy thing. You don't know this about me, but I'm an old ultra guy.
Somebody told me that. I do know that about you.
Yeah, before ultras were like cool, before the internet, because let's face it, if it doesn't exist on the internet, it doesn't exist. In the early 90s, I started doing ultras. As a matter of fact, I was part of that first group when they said, there's no way mountain bikers can go more than 3 hours on a bike in a race. There's no way, you know, it would kill. We started doing 12 hours, 24-hour races and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was part of that first group where they had a world solo championship for 24-hour mountain bike racing and did a lot of long distance stuff. We all thought back then, let's go back to the 90s, you were probably 10?
Yeah, I was born in 83, so.
Okay, so yeah, not you were like 9 or 10. Your anorexia hadn't really taken off yet. And we thought it was normal when you went, because nobody else was going along like that. You know, there was like the Tevis and some of these different races where people were running long distances and all this kind of stuff. But we would get off the bike after either a 12 or a 24-hour race, and we would already have inflammation in our ankles. By the next morning, we looked like we had elephantitis. You couldn't tell where your calf muscle, where your gastrocnemius stopped and your ankle started. You just looked like you had elephantitis. And of course, we all just surmised, oh, well, no one goes that hard for that long, right? It's just your body reacting to all of this over exercising. And even when I got into the road racing stuff and doing 500 milers and nonstop and all this kind of stuff, or when I would go out and do 200 miles, everyone looked like they had elephantitis the next day, or some thickening of the ankles and the hands. Everyone talked about, oh, my hands, I can't squeeze them. Look how fat they are. And we all thought it was because of over exercising, right? As it turns out, it was because we were all eating back then goo.
Glucose, yeah, glucose and
Power Bar was out back then, because it was the most portable stuff to take with you on a bike, right? You can just have it in your back pocket and whip it out, and every 30 minutes you're eating like a kid at a birthday party.
Yeah, it's still like that today. I mean, fast forward, you know, when I did my first ultra in November, because everything kept getting canceled during COVID. I did my first ultra, and I'll never forget, you know, like, I couldn't believe like the food they had set up for people there. It was like, I'm taking in, you know, when you're fat adapted, I had spent so much time just eating, and I can't tell you how many people, and I'm sure you get this all the time, like, you can't run 6 hours, you can't run 100 miles on, you know, low carb this. And I'm like, well, we're going to see, because I feel great and my body recovered. So I don't have all that swelling because I'm not taking in all those glucose and sugar. I never stopped, you know, I won my first ultra.
Which one did you do?
I did one out in Las Vegas, because everything was getting canceled. I did a 6-hour timed race out in Las Vegas. It's called the Happy Hippie Run. And
okay, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Beyond Limits is the company that puts it on. So they do Jackpot Ultra.
Yeah.
And then I did Tunnel Hill. So I did Tunnel Hill 50 this past
November. Are you going to do Jackpot at some point?
I think so. I think the goal this year is I'm going to do a 12-hour race in June, and then do my first 100 in the fall. And then I'd like to go do the Jackpot in February, as long as as long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing and my body holds up. But I tell you, it's night and day. Like, I would do a 20-mile run when I was a high carb athlete, and I was spent for the rest of the day. I was tired, I was achy. And like you said, it was just like, oh, I'm running a lot. When I became low carb, I'd go do like a 20-mile run, and then I could come home and do yard work and go for a hike. I mean, I always tell my wife I'm too sore for yard work. Like, I don't know how that works. It's just not too sore for anything else. That doesn't work. I try.
Look, my wife still does ultras. She's 60 now. She just did right before we left for Europe. She She did 100K. She's done, I'm sure you're familiar with the Badwater races.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's like
My
quite the
company,
temperature.
two of my companies sponsor that event. NSNG Foods, because we have the ultra fat product, and also purevitamin.club.com with the ultra salt.
Very cool.
So yeah, we sponsor Badwater 135 and Badwater Cape Fear. My wife has done Badwater Salton Sea twice, maybe 3 times. But yeah, I mean, it used to be when you turned 60, you were supposed to be an old person, right? And you just said it. You used to go out and run a 20-mile run, and you were spent. Last Saturday, she went out. It was spitting snow and raining, and I think it was, I don't know, 35 degrees out. And she just went off into the mountains and knocked out 20 miles.
Your body, humans are made to perform well. When I worked in the hospital, I had people younger than me with heart disease. I saw the youngest type 2, not type 1, type 2 diabetic I saw was 8 years old. He was over 200 pounds at 8 years old. Like how we are eating, this dogma that we need these this carbohydrate, especially the sugar in moderation. Dietitians love saying that. Social media loves saying that. It's keeping, one, it's completely ambiguous. Nobody knows what the hell, is it once a day, once a week, twice? 2, the body and brain can't moderate sugar and processed carbs. You get a rise in blood glucose, insulin comes in, you immediately get a blood sugar crash. That's why you guys, if you're listening, if you eat a granola bar or bagel, you're hungry 2 hours later. At the same time, it shifts neurotransmitters in your brain. We actually now know, Georgia Eda talks about this, that when you eat processed food, it can actually shift glutamate in your brain 100 times higher than it's supposed to be. Why is that important? That can actually suppress neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity helps you cope with stress. Yeah. If there's ever been a time in history when we need to cope with stress, it's right now. So eating all this processed foods actually can prevent you from coping with stress while causing inflammation through your body. But you'll get that blood sugar crash. So processed food companies you're going to want it again. It's really good marketing on their part. You're constantly craving it. It makes me sick and sad. And my profession says to have it in moderation all the time, basically.
I'm gonna admit to something that I did today. And you know what? I'm just realizing it now while we're talking. I woke up this morning and I had to do a podcast and I had to answer all my emails. And I looked around and I said, okay, I have to get my aerobics in. So I'm pointing right here because my bike is right next to it. So I got on my spinner and I went for 2 hours on the spinner. And then I realized that I shoot skeet in competition, shotguns. And I went, oh my God, it's going to be raining and snowing for the next 3 or 4 days. If I don't get out to the skeet range right now, it's not going to happen. So when I got off my bike, I dried off really fast, threw on some warm clothes. I still have the clothes on that I went to the skeet range in because it's freezing out. There's snow everywhere. I had to shovel snow around so I can get on and not slip while I was shooting. Shotguns and slipping is not a bad.
Sounds not good.
Yeah. So I did all of that. And so from 1 o'clock to like 3 o'clock, I shot skeet out in the freezing cold. I'm telling you all of this for a reason. I missed breakfast. All I had was coffee. My first coffee had a little heavy whipping cream, so I'm still basically fasted, right? That doesn't knock you out of dietary ketosis. Not dietary ketosis, but it doesn't nourish your body. And 2 hours on a spinner, if any calories came from that little inkling of high, that heavy cream I put in my first coffee, that was gone. I was at the range until 4. I came back. I did a podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I did the podcast before this, my wife said the guy just dumped a cord of wood because we were almost out of wood again. I had to stack a whole cord of wood, did it in an hour. That's hustling. It's freezing out there. I was sweating, right? Got that whole cord of wood. Still no calories, no nothing. I came in here, did a short Saturday podcast, and then plunked the mic down and did your podcast. I've had nothing today except coffee and water, period. Coffee and water. Why am I not dying?
Why are you not dying? That made me, and I'm going to tell you why you're not dying, but that made me think of a story when I went and saw a patient and it was 11 a.m. and she was yelling at me. She's like, I am starving. I haven't eaten since last night. We as a human society are trained now we have to eat, we don't even eat 3 times a day anymore. Statistically, we eat up to 19 times a day, chewing, grazing, eating. And when you do that, your blood sugar drops. Like if most people, if they don't eat every 2 to 3 hours, they have an emotional meltdown. They get dizzy, shaky. I used to be like that, but same with you. Like I remember the first time I went like 8 hours without eating just because I was busy, and that would have never, in no universe would that have happened before I became fat adapted. And the reason you can do that, and the reason I can do that, is because we're no longer just burning sugar and carbohydrates. We are now burning fat, ketones, obviously some glucose, but mostly fat. Our body is fat adapted. That's how humans were designed to live,
Right.
So, and it's a good way to live. You're not constantly hungry. You're not thinking about food. I feel like that's one of the reasons my brain has been able to heal. I don't obsess about food. I don't think about calories anymore because I'm nourished. I eat in a way that sustains me.
I was in,
Sorry, go ahead.
go on. I was going to say, I was in Macomb, Mississippi a couple of years ago. You reminded me of something. I was giving a talk at a small college or something near Macomb, and I was staying in Macomb, and they asked me if I can. It wasn't a talk; it was a class. I had to give a class at a university, and they were going to have me give a class the next day. So they paid for me to stay in Macomb overnight, which I did. Home of Bo Diddley. I don't know if you even know who Bo Diddley is at your age.
No, I
Famous,
don't.
famous blues guy.
Oh, cool. All right.
And so I'm in Macomb, Mississippi, and it's it was largely a Black community. And so while I'm there, I'm looking around, like I want to go immerse myself and see what's doing. I want to find a coffee shop and find different places to go. I want to see what people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Large African American, Black, whatever you're calling them these days, and everyone seemed to be morbidly obese, almost to a person. I could not. As a matter of fact, I got to the point where I was trying to find, white, Black, or otherwise, I was trying to find someone who was not morbidly obese, just average obesity, right?
Yeah.
Could not find it. I saw these young girls walking down the street, wider than they were tall. And here's what I noticed about most people. And you reminded me of this when you said people eat 19 times a day. They constantly had something going, whether they were taking chips out of a bag or eating some kind of donut or some kind of snack like that, or just a 64-ounce beverage, like the big giant, just a constant feed of sugar going into their body, constantly, constantly, constantly. And I'm looking at this and I said to myself, you got the ghrelin working against you at that point. You got leptin working against you. Cortisol's going crazy, everything. And I said, think about this. If I came to you the day before your period, Michelle, and said, Michelle, here's what I want you to do. I want you to concentrate really hard tonight and tomorrow and not have a period this month. You would tell me I'm crazy, right?
Yeah, I would.
I would say, well, why can't you do that? And you would say, well, I can't concentrate a period. I can't do that because hormones dictate that I will flush out this egg and rebuild another one for next month. We'll try again, right? Hormones dictate that you're going to have a period every 28, 29, or 30 days, right?
Correct.
Yet we think that we can have, as you said, the dietitians say, oh, moderate sugar, and they don't tell you what moderate is. And you have your ghrelin running wild. You have your leptin running wild. You have cortisol. You have everything just running in the wrong direction, telling you every switch is now going in the wrong direction. We think we can control that. Yet I can't get you to control one period, or any other woman for that matter.
Most dietitians that I've worked with in my education did not really teach me much about ghrelin. I think if you asked a traditional dietitian in the hospital setting, hey, what is this meal doing to their ghrelin? They may say, what's ghrelin? Yeah. Or they might know what insulin is, but the cortisol, I don't know, leptin. I think I learned that sometime. We don't teach about hormones because all we teach is it's calories, because calories is like, oh, well, then it can come from donuts. It can come from Frappuccino. It's just calories, right? A
Right.
little Ensure drink that's got 10 grams of protein and 25 grams of sugar. Oh, that's fine because it's all calories. So yes, you're correct. We cannot work against hormones. That's why I hate blaming the patient. You know, we can't expect our young people or anybody to be consuming, you know, these carbohydrates, these sugary beverages, sugary drinks. You're literally, you can't stop eating at some point, right? Because you're switching
Right.
your hormones the opposite way. And so the only way to switch this, the only way to achieve health and to reverse obesity and reverse metabolic disease, we don't need less. So we don't need to moderate our soda or moderate our donuts. We need to stop eating them. They are shifting our hormones wrong. I wouldn't say, Vinny, hey, instead of crashing your car at 20 miles or 40 miles an hour, how about we do it at 30? You'd say, no, let's stop crashing our car. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We need to stop eating things and stop drinking things that are shifting our hormones incorrectly and start shifting things, vegans. We're talking to you guys as well as, a lot of other people. We need to start having highly bioavailable animal proteins and animal fats. The things we were told are bad for us are actually shifting our hormones in the correct direction.
Right. Yeah, no, I think you and your wife are going to love watching my third movie because
I can't wait. We're going to do it.
We go straight on into it. Like I said, I was trying to have an honest discussion from both sides and we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
We couldn't
That's unfortunate, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think they have a very good leg to stand on because their arguments aren't based in strong science or any science. Well, I guess it's outdated science. So,
well, the science was never outdated. They just choose not to look at the science. As I have Michael Greger saying in my movie, he goes, everyone tells me vegans cherry picking science. And he says, we're only cherry picking the science that's available. Oh no, Michael. Oh no, that's not true. As a matter of fact, most of the studies that you guys use actually say the opposite thing that you say it's saying. I don't know if you know that. Nina,
I saw that in the Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine when they were putting out how dangerous the ketogenic diet was. They actually cited a study because they were saying, oh, protein's bad for your kidneys. You don't want to have too much protein. They literally only cited half of a sentence because the study was saying that, yes, when you're in end-stage kidney failure, eating too much protein can cause mortality, but they left out the second part of the sentence, but we actually see that it doesn't increase your case of all mortality. Like basically saying like, yeah, but if you don't get enough protein, you're going to die of malnourishment or something else. So they literally only cited half of a sentence. But most people don't actually go back and read the case studies that people are citing. They just look at the big headlines. This big keto's dangerous. A lot of people don't dig deeper. That's a big problem with society is we just hear something and run with it versus asking some questions.
I refused when I wrote my book. It was before keto was actually a term.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote my book, I was writing it around 2010. And my co-author said to me at one point, he said, why won't you use the word ketogenic? That's exactly what, you've been talking about this with, I worked in Hollywood with actors and celebrities and everything. And he says, that's what you've been doing that's been your life's work for over 30 years. That was your big secret, that you got everyone on low carbs and they lost weight, basically Atkins, right? He goes, why won't you use the word ketogenic? And I said, because most doctors with MDs out there actually believe that ketogenic means ketoacidosis.
Oh,
These are doctors. And I said, I won't, if I put that in my book. And as it turns out, people still say, oh, ketogenic, that's dangerous. You can die from that because you go into ketoacidosis, which is nothing could be further from the truth.
People confuse those two terms, ketosis and ketoacidosis. They are two completely different terms. One will kill you. One is completely healthy and sustainable and what you probably should be in.
Yeah, and every doctor out there, that's why I came up with NSNG, no sugars, no grains, right?
Yeah.
And ended up trademarking that and registering that and everything else because I was afraid 12 years ago now, I was afraid to write the word ketogenic in a book.
Yeah. No, I mean, most dietitians I talk to, if I use the word ketogenic, they act like I said, I'm going to murder your firstborn, freak out, we're told it's a terrible diet. We started using the term therapeutic carbohydrate restrict. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that it's gotten such a bad reputation when it's one of the, safest and most health promoting things you can do.
Yeah. And the thing that drives me nuts now is that I hate that keto has become this keyword. As I said, you can have a bowl of sugar and you can stamp keto on it and go, this is keto, and you can put it in the store and now when it says keto certified, no one's certifying keto, right? So you can make any piece of crap and go, this is keto certified. Really? Which government organization is doing that? Because I'm not familiar at all.
Well, it's kind of like supplements probably, right? Where you and I could start like Vinny and Michelle's calcium supplement, and legally it doesn't have to have any calcium in it, so.
Yeah, but look, I own a supplement company. So the legitimate supplement companies, you really have to go through tests. You have to go through efficacy tests and everything else. Yeah. And, to get GMP stamps and all that, they're good supplements. And I tell people all the time, when you buy a supplement, you need to read what's on it, because it tells you whether it's been third-party tested and everything else right on the packaging, right? That's why when you buy, my vitamins or like Pure Encapsulation or anyone, these are all Thorne. These are all top brands, right? And people go, why is it so much more expensive? Number one, we're using the real ingredients. That costs more money. And number two, and more than anything else, we're third-party testing this shit, and that ain't cheap.
No, it's not. Yeah. And in life, often you get what you pay for. So, you go to Costco and get $1.99 vitamins. God help you, who knows what's in there,
Yeah. No, but that's, the supplement world is somewhere where, you have to trust who's making the supplement, and you just can't trust everyone. We have a few minutes left.
All right.
I try to keep these to an hour because people go, you go too long.
Fair enough.
And first off, I'm going to ask you this on the air, so you can't say no.
Okay.
Would you promise, because I don't feel like we scratched the surface. Would you promise to come back at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you want to have me, I'd be happy to come on. This is fun. Yeah. I feel like I could talk for another couple hours. So.
Yeah, no, I want to have you on over. I want to make you like my new Nina Tai shows, right?
Let's do it. I can be Nina Tai shows part 2.
Yeah, the younger Nina Tai shows. Nina,
she's
you're
amazing.
young
I haven't got to meet Nina yet, but I was on it. I did get an email from her, and I felt very fangirl. I'm a huge fan of her work, clearly. So.
She and I, Serena always says, don't have to worry about you two. It's like, oh, come on, honey. She's married. You're married. We're all good. But I love her. I love her. She's been in all 3 of my movies.
Fantastic.
No matter what, it's like, Nina, you're showing up, right? Because if you're not showing up, I'm not doing another movie. So I want to have you back on over and over and over again.
I'll come on as many times as you'd like me to be here.
I got to do a quick ad here, and I want you to give us your final thoughts on, if someone walks in, someone is struggling, they have A1Cs of 10 or 11, and their blood sugar is off the charts, and their triglycerides are 400, and you have to take them on. I want to know what you would tell them, but I can't have you say that until I tell everyone about Villa Cappelli olive oil, the longest running sponsor of the show. Villa Cappelli, folks, they were with us. We were talking about Villa Cappelli before they were even a sponsor of this show. Paul Cappelli, God rest his soul, he and his husband, they started this great company. When Paul died, Stephen Crutchfield said, you know what? The company's not going to die with Paul. I'm going to keep it going. You guys have heard Stephen on the show several times. The guy, once Paul died, he learned Italian in earnest because he's in Puglia. He's making this happen. He kept it going, folks. You can still get the best olive oil on the planet. Go get the stuff. I always tell everyone, get the 3-liter 10. You go, oh, that's $100. Yes, but 3 liters, that'll last you a long time. Number one. Number two, spend over $100 and you will also get free shipping. And when you're getting something like olive oil, it's heavy. You're going to save a ton of money. And number three, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, for a 10% discount. Now, if you put in a 10% discount and you only spent $100, it's going to bring it down to like $90. So you won't get the free shipping. So spend about $115. You'll still be over $100 with the discount, and you will get free shipping, and you will get 10% off, and it will be great. So go check out Villa Cappelli olive oil. Let them know we sent you. Promo code Vinny. Folks, the book is called Dietitian's Dilemma. She's got a website, dietitiansdilemma.net, N-E-T, not org. We've been sitting here talking to Michelle Hurn. Hurn is spelled H-U-R-N. Did I spell that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, because some people spell Hurn with an E.
No, H-E-A-R, yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, so H-U-R-N. Go check out everything Michelle Hurn. So Michelle, someone comes in, they're metabolically broken, the liver's off, the A1Cs, you're looking at triglycerides through the roof. What are you telling them on day one? What are we doing?
Day one, honestly, this is something that I've started doing with people that I work with before we even talk about nutrition. I have started talking about a concept called radical honesty. And I want people to get real, like no more fake, fluffy bullshit. I think in the hospital, sometimes we coddle people, and I'm not talking about, I want to be kind and I want to be compassionate, but I want people, this isn't shaming. This isn't, oh, I'm a loser and I'm fat. This is like, yeah, my life is really unmanageable. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm not able to show up for my kids. I actually can't drive because my back hurts. Like having people kind of like really sit with like, oh my God, this is what it's like right now. And then I want to tell you, what the body and the brain have a tremendous capacity to heal once we start fueling it correctly. And, I say your life could look completely different in as little as 3 to 4 weeks. And it definitely, by 3 months, 6 months, your life will look completely different. But I also need you to I need 30 days. I need you to give me 30 days. Like I need a commitment. I need because most people can do that. Most people can if you say 6 months or a year, but I need you to hang in there and really trust this. Because in 30 days, you're going to feel better. You're going to lose weight and you're going to be on a path you never dreamed possible. So I try to get people to get real with it. And then I want to have them start dreaming and thinking. Cause when I started to dream and think oh my God, I'm gonna be able to run and I feel healthy. But I also had to be honest, I am broken. I am physically, mentally, I'm a mess, So, and then we start running with an animal-based diet. We start breaking it down and most people are pretty excited that they can eat steak and butter and eggs and feel amazing. So that's kind of how I work.
Well, folks, you heard it straight from the horse's mouth. She's not a horse. You might want to check out this video. We also did a video of this. She's kind of cute and we all like looking that cute. Okay, she's not kind of cute. She's a smoke show. So go check her out. You are. Jesus Christ. Your wife is the luckiest woman on the planet. So you guys want to go check out this woman and see what she's up to. But her website, one more time, is dietitiansdilemma.net. Her book is also by the same name, Dietitian's Dilemma, the book. Can they get that on Amazon?
Yeah, so actually right now on Amazon, it's only on Amazon. So you can get it through the website, Amazon. I have the paperback, I have an ebook, and I actually read the book on Audible. And I'm also very active on social media, at Instagram at Run, Eat, Meet, Repeat, and on Twitter at Michelle Hurn RD. So feel free to message me on either one of those platforms. But if you say something mean on Twitter, I won't respond.
Oh, come on. I always respond with
even to mean people, to trolls. Your followers, your people listen to your podcast aren't mean.
No, but I get there's people that want me dead.
No, sure.
Stick with this long enough. You'll have people who want you.
Oh, I've got a few. I got a few vegans that photoshopped me and it's all right.
You haven't made it until a vegan tells you that you should be dead. Folks, you know what to do. We all go shopping on Amazon. If you're going to buy her book, before you go to Amazon, go to vinnytotters.com, click through the banner. Megan will make this part of the book club once I read it, and I will read it in short order. So by the time this comes out in, well over a week from when we're recording this, I will have read the book and it will already be in the book club. So go check it out at Amazon. Also, we have the superfan page at vinnytotters.com. You can check that out. Okay, on behalf of Michelle Hurn, my name is Vinny Totterich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.